Ethan Cole's eyes snapped open to a soft humming light. The world was bright, but not in the harsh way of the sun. It was a cool bluish glow that filled a small chamber. The first thing he realized was that he felt very exposed. Very, very exposed. He tried to sit up and immediately froze. There, lying across his chest with eyes wide and glowing faintly like stars, was an alien girl. She had long, silvery hair that seemed to float slightly, and her skin shimmered in subtle patterns of violet and blue. She didn't move, didn't speak. She just stared at him with intense curiosity. Ethan's mind raced. Did I die? Am I dreaming, or is this some very bad prank? Hi? He finally croaked. His voice sounded strange even to him, dry and tight. The alien didn't respond. Her arms and legs rested lightly across him, but there was a strange weight. A quiet insistence, like she belonged there. Panic started to rise. Ethan tried to move his arms to push her away gently, but as soon as he moved, her gaze sharpened. Don't. A clear, calm voice said, not in words he understood, but somehow he felt the meaning in his mind. Ethan froze. Okay, telepathy, great, what? Wyston, who are you? He stammered. Still, she didn't speak. Instead, she shifted slightly, and he felt the strange pressure of her presence, almost protective, almost territorial. Slowly, reluctantly, Ethan's brain started to process the situation. He remembered flashes from the night before, the emergency alarm on the space station, the sudden evacuation, and the last thing before the darkness, the cryo-sleep pod. Then nothing. He must have been transported somehow. And now he was awake, naked, on an alien ship, with an alien princess sitting on his chest. Okay, definitely not dream. Definitely not good, he muttered under his breath. The alien blinked, slowly, deliberately, and Ethan realized she wasn't hostile. She wasn't aggressive. She was curious, and maybe in her own way respectful. Can you move? He asked, his face turning bright red despite being alone in the room. The alien tilted her head and then relaxed again. A gentle warmth radiated from her, not threatening but insistent. Ethan noticed something odd. He didn't feel any fear from her. Just an expectation. He tried a different approach. Okay, look. I'm not a warrior. I'm just a mechanic. I didn't, he stopped. Every word seemed awkward in the situation. He felt trapped in a bubble of embarrassment and confusion. But the alien didn't move or respond. She just stared, waiting. Ethan's mind began to race. Maybe she's a hostage. Maybe she thinks I'm important. He had no idea. He didn't even know the ship's language or customs. At that moment, the door slid open with a smooth hiss. Two tall figures entered, their skin gleaming like polished metal, their eyes like liquid amber. Ethan instinctively tried to shield himself without much effect. They froze for a moment when they saw him, and the alien princess on his chest. Serena. She chose him, one of the figures said. The words were unfamiliar, but somehow Ethan understood. She chose me? Ethan blinked. Chose me? For what? The alien princess finally spoke, her voice soft but firm in a language he somehow understood. For survival. For bond, he woke. He is mine until the journey ends. Ethan's brain short-circuited. Wait, what? The two tall figures nodded. You are now the life bond of the princess. You must stay near her. The bond is sacred. You are responsible for her safety. Ethan nearly fell over. Responsible? For you? Look, I don't even know how to operate a blaster, and I've never, ever been in a fight. The princess tilted her head, and Ethan felt a strange sense of inevitability wash over him. Her eyes were soft but firm. There was no room for argument. You are awake. You are near me. That is enough. Ethan groaned and leaned back, rubbing his temples. I can't believe this is happening. Naked. Naked and responsible for a princess on an alien ship. How did my life come to this? The two tall figures, apparently attendants or guards, sighed, though their sighs were more like musical tones than breath. One of them handed him a robe-like garment that seemed to form around him as he touched it. A strange, comforting warmth settled over his body. Ethan quickly wrapped it around himself, grateful for at least some dignity. The princess did not move. She remained on his chest, calm, watching. Okay, he said, trying to calm down. First, my name is Ethan Cole. Second, I'm human. Third, I don't know the first thing about your culture or your ships or your whatever. The princess finally smiled, a subtle curl of her lips. Then you will learn. Together we survive. Together we will face them. Ethan swallowed hard. Face who? Before the princess could answer, the floor vibrated slightly. The hum of the ship deepened. Lights blinked in sequences like a heartbeat. Ethan's stomach sank. He had a feeling the answer was not going to be simple. One of the attendants stepped forward. Pirates, raiders, they hunt the princess. They will not stop. Ethan looked from the glowing-eyed princess to the tall attendants. His mind raced, searching for any possible escape or plan. There was none. Yeah, okay, guess I'm staying then. The princess nodded, settling her weight gently but firmly on him. You are staying. You cannot leave. The bond requires it. Ethan let out a slow, resigned breath. Of course it does. Why wouldn't it? The attendants motioned for him to follow, and Ethan carefully got to his feet. The princess moved with him, her hands lightly on his shoulders, guiding him. Her presence was surprisingly heavy in an emotional sense, though physically light. Every step he took felt like he was carrying a responsibility far beyond anything he had ever imagined. The corridors of the ship were wide and clean, with walls that shimmered faintly, almost like liquid metal. He could see other crew members moving in and out of rooms, their shapes sleek and alien, their eyes flicking toward him with curiosity or awe. You are human, one of them whispered, almost to themselves. So fragile, yet chosen. Ethan tried not to let his nerves show. He kept his eyes forward, wondering if he looked completely ridiculous. After all, he was a naked human in an alien culture, suddenly chosen as the life bond of a princess. I have to be dreaming. This can't be real, but it was real. The soft hum of the ship under his feet, the weight of the princess, the strange shimmer of the walls, they were all real, and the first lesson hit him like a blast. Humans were different. Humans survived by thinking fast, by improvising, by daring to do what no one else would. That was all he had, but somehow, here on this alien ship, that might be enough. The attendants led them to a larger chamber at the heart of the ship. Screens floated in midair, showing stars, planets, and ships moving across the void. Ethan blinked at the sheer size of it. The ship was enormous, a vessel that could almost be its own small city. You will learn the ways, one attendant said. But first you must rest. Your body is weak from sleep. Ethan sank onto a chair, finally relieved to have a seat. The princess sat beside him, her hand resting lightly on his arm. Despite the strangeness, the weight, the awkwardness, he felt a sense of safety he couldn't explain. Okay, he muttered under his breath. Step 1, survive the awakening. Step 2, figure out what the hell is going on. Step 3, I guess learn to not die with an alien princess sitting on me. The princess tilted her head, eyes sparkling. Step 3 is unnecessary. You already survive. That is why you were chosen. Ethan stared at her, feeling the absurdity and gravity of it all. He was a human, alone in a strange galaxy, chosen by an alien princess to be her life bond. Naked, literally and figuratively. And somehow, he felt ready. Or at least he would pretend he was, because pretending had always worked for humans. It had to work here, too. The soft hum of the alien ship accompanied every step Ethan Cole took, as he followed Princess Serenia and her attendants deeper into the vessel. Every wall glimmered like liquid silver, and the air carried a faint scent, floral and strange, that made him feel simultaneously dizzy and awake. He couldn't stop thinking about what had just happened. Naked, awakened, chosen, responsible. It all sounded like a terrible dream. And yet here he was, fully awake, fully human, and fully out of place. Serenia walked beside him, her glowing eyes observing him with a calm intensity. She didn't speak much, but Ethan could sense her emotions clearly. Her presence was commanding, not in a threatening way, but in a way that told him he could not argue with her. He had learned quickly that with Serenia arguing was pointless. You seem surprised? She said finally, her voice soft, melodic yet firm in the alien way he somehow understood. You could say that, Ethan replied, rubbing the back of his neck. I mean, I've never been on a ship like this. Never even been in cryosleep before. And now I wake up naked, with a princess on my chest. I'm not exactly what your culture considers heroic. Serenia tilted her head. Heroic is not what matters. You woke, you survived. That is enough. Our people do not always choose strength. We choose survival. And survival requires bond, Ethan frowned. Bond? You mean that thing from earlier? You lying on me? Serenia's lips curved into a small smile. Yes, that is the life bond. A sacred connection during times of danger. It ensures we survive together. You are now my life bond, Ethan blinked. Right, life bond, sacred, totally normal. Got it, he wasn't entirely joking. Humans did a lot of strange things in emergencies, but this was beyond anything he could have imagined. And it wasn't just the physical closeness, it was the expectation. The moment he woke up, the ship's crew had treated him differently. Not with fear, not with hostility, but with respect. And that respect was unnerving. The attendants led him to a room that resembled a large hall. Holographic screens floated above, showing star charts, moving ships, and distant planets. The floor hummed softly under their feet, and small drones zipped past, inspecting the corridors. Ethan couldn't help but feel like an ant in a universe much bigger than he had ever known. Why? Do they treat me like this? Ethan asked quietly, nodding toward the attendants and other crew members watching him. Because you are chosen, Serenia replied simply. Humans are rare among us. Rare, fragile, and curious. You survived what many could not. That is worthy of respect, Ethan swallowed. Fragile? I'm not fragile, I'm average at best. Serenia's gaze softened. Average is different from fragile. Humans are small, yes, but they endure. They think, adapt, and dare to act where others hesitate. That is strength in its own way. Ethan felt a spark of pride even in the midst of confusion. For the first time since waking up, he felt like maybe he wasn't completely out of place. Maybe humans, despite being fragile, had something to offer in this vast alien galaxy. The attendants guided him further into the ship, explaining in simple terms he could understand a few things about Valari culture. The Valari, they said, valued bonds over bloodlines in moments of crisis. Choosing a life bond was a sacred act, meant to protect both parties from mortal danger, and survival, not glory, was the ultimate goal. Mortality is not a weakness, Serenia added. It is proof of choice. You woke, you survived, you are here. That is why you are mine. Ethan nodded slowly, trying to absorb the alien philosophy. It was strange, yes, but there was a logic to it. Humans survived in ways others did not. Perhaps that was why she had chosen him. Then, without warning, the ship jolted. Lights flickered and the hum deepened into a low roar. Ethan stumbled slightly but caught himself, gripping the nearest rail. What was that? He asked, eyes wide. Serenia's eyes narrowed. They are near. The Quran marauders. They hunt me. They will not wait. Ethan's heart sank. Hunt you like pirates? Yes, raiders, they take what they want. They do not understand life bonds or survival. They only understand force. He felt a surge of fear, but also a strange excitement. Fear was natural, but he also realized, maybe, just maybe, this was where humans excelled. Improvisation, daring, thinking on the fly. He wasn't strong, he wasn't trained, but he could survive in ways the Valari might not. You think I can help? He asked, a little doubt in his voice. Serenia's gaze softened again. You already help. Simply by being here awake and willing to endure. That is enough. But you will learn more. You will adapt. That is what humans do. Ethan exhaled, trying to calm his racing thoughts. He had always prided himself on staying calm under pressure. Maybe this was the ultimate test. The attendants led them to a large observation deck. Outside, the stars stretched endlessly, and in the distance, sleek ships moved like shadows across the void. Ethan could see a fleet approaching, angular and dark, their hulls bristling with weapons. Those are the Koran marauders, one attendant explained. They will not stop until they have the princess. You must protect her, even if it means your life. Ethan swallowed hard. Even if it means, wait, I don't even have a blaster. You have your mind, Serenia said gently. That is your weapon. Humans think differently. That is why you survive. Ethan looked at her, then at the fleet approaching. He realized she was right. Humans had survived countless dangers on Earth, in space stations, in wars, and in disasters, simply by using their brains, improvising, and daring to act when others hesitated. Maybe, just maybe, he could survive this too. Over the next few hours, Ethan began learning the ship's systems. The attendants showed him controls, explained navigation, and described the basic functions of the vessel. He listened carefully, asking questions when he didn't understand. Despite the complexity, he noticed one pattern. Humans could always find a simple solution to a problem that others made complicated. For example, when a small drone malfunctioned, Ethan suggested using a spare circuit and some basic wiring to reroute its power. The attendant stared at him in disbelief as the drone whirred back to life. Serenia's eyes sparkled with approval. You adapt. That is why you are here. That is why you are mine. Ethan felt a mix of pride and embarrassment. He didn't want to be anyone's chosen protector, but at the same time, he felt alive in a way he hadn't in years. Humans thrived in chaos, and now chaos surrounded him in the form of alien fleets and life-or-death stakes. As the hours passed, Ethan and Serenia grew more accustomed to each other's presence. She remained close, often resting lightly against him, her warmth and calm presence strangely reassuring. Despite the strangeness, he felt a bond forming, not of romance but of mutual trust and reliance. Then the alarm sounded. Red lights pulsed and the ship shook violently. Ethan braced himself as the attendants rushed to their stations. "They are here," one said, tension in their voice. "The marauders have arrived." Ethan felt a thrill of fear and excitement. He wasn't a warrior. He didn't know how to fight like the Valari, but he had something they didn't. A human mind that thrived under pressure, a mind that could improvise, outthink, and adapt. Serenia placed a hand on his shoulder. "Stay close, observe, learn, when the time comes, act." Ethan nodded. "Right, observe. Learn, act. Got it." And as the first blasts of energy struck the ship's shields, he realized this was only the beginning. Humans survived because they dared, because they adapted, and because they never gave up. Ethan Cole, naked and chosen, awake and untrained, was about to prove why. For the first time since waking, he smiled. The hum of the Valari ship had shifted. Where before it had been calm and steady, now it pulsed with tension like a heartbeat racing in fear. Ethan Cole stood at the observation deck, gripping the railing as the distant stars flashed with movement. The Corran marauders were closing in. Their fleet appeared as dark silhouettes against the void, jagged ships bristling with weapons. Beside him, Princess Serenia's hand rested lightly on his arm, her eyes glowing faintly with determination. "They are bold," she said, her voice calm but carrying a weight of warning. "They know we are vulnerable. They do not understand life bonds. They do not respect survival." Ethan swallowed hard. "Vulnerable? I feel like we're about to get eaten for breakfast." Serenia's lips curved into a small, approving smile. "You are afraid. That is good. Humans fear and yet humans act. That is why you survive." Ethan took a deep breath, trying to focus. He had never faced alien pirates before. He had never piloted a massive starship or fought in space. And yet somehow he felt a spark of readiness. Humans had survived impossible odds on Earth, wars, disasters, space emergencies, and he had adapted each time. Perhaps this was no different. The attendants moved quickly, issuing orders in the Valari language. The ship's shields flared as the first wave of Corran attack drones approached. Ethan watched as Valari warriors prepared weapons he barely recognized, energy blades humming and rifles glinting. "You must help," one attendant said urgently. "The bond requires it." Ethan nodded. He didn't have a weapon yet, but he did have an idea. Humans weren't the strongest, but they were clever. Improvisation could turn the tide. He ran to a panel controlling the ship's auxiliary systems. Using basic logic and a little trial and error, he rerouted power to reinforce the shields in weak sectors. Sparks flew and alarms blared, but the shields strengthened, holding off the first barrage of the drones. Serenia's eyes widened in surprise. "You think differently. That is why you are chosen." Ethan swallowed, his heart racing. "Yeah, well, humans do a lot of weird stuff when in danger." The Corran marauders were relentless. Their main ships moved like predators, surrounding the Valari vessel, while smaller attack drones zipped in unpredictable patterns. The Valari fighters, elegant and disciplined, engaged the drones, but Ethan noticed a pattern. The Corran drones were predictable in their formation, relying on speed and numbers rather than cunning. He pointed to the approaching drones. "They're all using the same angle. They're fast but predictable. We can lure them into a trap." Serenia tilted her head. "Explain." Ethan quickly outlined a plan. "We fake a weak sector in the shields. Draw them in. When they commit, we cut the power to that corridor temporarily, forcing them into the ship's magnetic stabilizers. It'll disable them without firing a single shot." The attendants exchanged glances, hesitant. "Humans are unconventional," one said, "but it may work." With the princess beside him, Ethan activated his plan. He rerouted shield power, simulating a weak section. As predicted, the Corran drones darted toward the opening, confident in their attack. At the last second, Ethan flipped the override and the magnetic stabilizers engaged, spinning the drones wildly. Sparks flew and several drones crashed into the ship's hull, neutralized. The crew stared in awe. Serenia's eyes sparkled with approval. "You do not fight with strength, yet you win. That is human ingenuity." Ethan allowed himself a small, proud smile. Sometimes brains beat brawn. At least that's what I tell myself. But there was no time to relax. The main Corran ships were still approaching, massive and menacing. Ethan's plan had only slowed them, not stopped them. The attendants guided him to a tactical console. "You will see more clearly here. The bond requires action. Think, human. Act." Ethan studied the approaching fleet. The Quran ships moved in tight formation, their weapons synchronized. A direct attack would be suicidal. But humans always found a way. He noticed the Quran ships maintained a fixed distance, relying on long-range firepower rather than close combat. We can't beat them head-on, he muttered. But we can divide them. He sketched a quick mental plan. We use the Valari fighters to bait them. Draw one ship away at a time. Meanwhile, we use the ship's environmental controls to create hazards, electrical surges, gravitational fluctuations, to disable their systems. Hit and run. That's how we survive. Serenya's hand tightened slightly on his arm. Humans are clever. This may work. The attendants executed the plan under Ethan's guidance. Valari fighters engaged, drawing one of the Quran ships away. Ethan manipulated the ship's environmental systems, creating bursts of artificial gravity that threw the enemy ship off course. Alarms blared, but the maneuver worked. The Quran ship faltered, its weapons misfiring. Ethan's heart pounded. Okay, one down. Now let's see if we can repeat. Wave after wave, the human mind and Valari precision worked in tandem. Each time the Quran ships tried to adapt, Ethan anticipated their moves, using their predictability against them. The crew started murmuring in admiration. Humans were small, fragile, and unfamiliar, but their thinking was a weapon the Quran had not considered. During a brief lull, Ethan leaned against the console, wiping sweat from his brow. Serenya's presence was steady, comforting. You did well, she said softly. You saved lives. That is why the bond exists. Ethan shook his head. I'm just thinking, that's all. Humans survive because we try things others won't. We take risks. Sometimes it works, sometimes, well, we die. Serenya's eyes glowed faintly. You do not die, you act. That is why you are chosen. That is why you are human. The next wave came faster, larger, more coordinated. Ethan's mind raced. There were too many ships, too many weapons. A direct confrontation would be catastrophic. But humans could improvise under pressure. He noticed a weak point in the Quran formation. Their lead ships relied heavily on synchronized sensors. Listen, he told the attendants. If we can disrupt their sensors even for a few seconds, it'll create confusion. Use our drone swarms to fly into their path. Force them to react, break formation. That's our chance. The attendants executed his instructions and chaos erupted in the enemy fleet. The lead Quran ship faltered. Drones collided, and the coordinated attack broke apart. Valari fighters seized the opportunity, striking with precision. Ethan's plan worked. The Quran ships retreated slightly, regrouping but clearly shaken. The Valari crew erupted in quiet celebration. The human had done the impossible, turned the tide of battle with brains instead of brute force. Serenya looked at him, eyes bright with admiration. You do not fight like us, yet you win. That is why the galaxy must respect humans. That is why the bond is sacred. Ethan felt a mix of relief and pride. He had survived the first attack and in doing so had proven something important. Humans were small, yes. Fragile, yes. But clever, daring, and adaptable beyond measure. The ship settled into a cautious rhythm, shields repairing, systems stabilizing. Ethan finally allowed himself to breathe. For the first time, he felt not just fear but a sense of purpose. Okay, he muttered, half to himself, half to Serenya. We survived. That's step one. Step two. Figure out how to keep surviving. Serenya smiled faintly. Together we will survive. Humans think differently. That is why the galaxy will notice you. Ethan chuckled despite the tension. Notice me? I'm just a mechanic. Barely survived my last job on Earth without frying myself. Now I'm here, leading a ship against alien pirates. Serenya's gaze softened. You are more than a mechanic. You are human. That is enough. And as the stars outside shimmered with the distant glow of retreating Quran ships, Ethan realized something profound. Survival wasn't about strength alone. It was about daring to act, thinking differently, and refusing to give up. Humans, small and fragile though they might seem, had survived for centuries by doing exactly that. Ethan Cole, naked and chosen, had proven the first truth of humanity. When danger arrives, humans do not just survive, they endure, adapt, and overcome. And the galaxy, he thought with a small, cautious smile, was about to learn just how clever humans could be. The Valari ship hummed quietly, but the calm was deceptive. Ethan Cole stood in the main control room, surveying the glowing panels and star charts with a mix of awe and determination. The first wave of Quran marauders had been repelled, but Ethan knew it was only a matter of time before the next attack came. Beside him, Princess Serenya's hand rested lightly on his arm. as if to remind him of the bond that now tied them together. Ethan had grown used to her presence, though not entirely comfortable. There was an odd comfort in the weight of her hand, but also a constant reminder that the lives of many depended on him, and he had no formal training to guide them. "You seem restless," Serenia said softly, her voice carrying a melodic tone that echoed slightly in the control room. Ethan rubbed his forehead. "Restless, yeah. Maybe a little. I survived the first attack, sure. But what happens if they come back with more ships? Bigger weapons? I can't just keep improvising forever." Serenia's eyes sparkled faintly. "Improvisation is human strength. You adapt, you endure, and you teach others to do the same. That is why you are chosen," Ethan sighed. "Teach them? I'm a mechanic, not a general. I barely survived my own training at the space station. You survived because you think differently. That is more valuable than years of training in a single method. The crew will learn from your way if they are willing to see." Ethan considered her words. Humans survived because they didn't follow rules blindly. They adapted, learned quickly, and often used what others overlooked. Perhaps that could work here. Perhaps it had to. He gathered the attendants and some of the Valari officers in the central chamber. "Listen," he began, speaking as clearly as he could in the Valari language he had been practicing. "The Koran marauders fight in patterns. They rely on numbers and coordination, but they are predictable. Their attacks are strong, but rigid. We can use that." The Valari officers exchanged uncertain glances. They had trained for decades in traditional Valari combat, relying on honor, precision, and coordinated formations. The humans' ideas seemed reckless. "I'm going to teach you some human strategies," Ethan continued. "We can't match them in brute force, but we can outthink them. First, improvisation. Don't wait for orders when you see an opportunity. Second, misdirection. Lead them into traps, make them react, not act. Third, use the ship itself, corridors, shields, and environmental systems to our advantage. You don't need to destroy them all. You just need to survive and disrupt." Serenia observed quietly, her gaze calm but approving. "He speaks truth. Humans endure by seeing differently. Observe, adapt, and act. That is your lesson." Ethan smiled faintly. "Exactly. Simple, right?" Over the next few hours, Ethan worked with the Valari crew. At first, they were hesitant to break tradition or use unorthodox methods. But as Ethan demonstrated with small drills and simulations, they began to see the value of thinking differently. In one exercise, he rigged a corridor with temporary force fields, simulating a trap. The Valari warriors were skeptical, expecting direct confrontation. But when a simulated enemy ship moved into the corridor, the force fields activated perfectly, diverting it harmlessly into a containment bay. The crew watched in awe. "Humans think strangely," one officer muttered. "Yet it works," Ethan chuckled. "Strange is human for smart. We survive because we try things others won't. And sometimes, we win." Serenia's eyes glowed softly. "You are teaching more than tactics. You are teaching confidence. That is rare among the Valari." As the day progressed, Ethan introduced more ideas. Small drones could act as decoys, drawing enemy fire or scanning for weak points. Power systems could be temporarily rerouted to create hazards for approaching ships. Even simple maneuvers like sudden shifts in gravity in select corridors could disrupt enemy boarding attempts. The crew began to respond, and Ethan felt a growing sense of pride. He had expected doubt, hesitation, maybe even failure. But humans were not meant to fail easily. Their strength was adaptability. And in teaching the Valari to see the universe differently, he was extending that human strength across an entire alien crew. During a break, he sat with Serenia on a raised platform overlooking the ship's central chamber. She leaned lightly against him, the warmth of her presence strangely comforting despite the chaos around them. "You think they understand?" Ethan asked. "The crew, I mean. Will they really use these human ways in battle?" "They will learn," Serenia replied softly. "Humans are unique because they endure by daring. They inspire others to endure as well. You have already changed them." Ethan stared out at the stars, feeling the weight of her words. He had come to this ship as a mechanic, untrained in combat, unprepared for the dangers of deep space. Yet now he was teaching strategies, planning defenses, and shaping the crew's understanding of survival. A sudden alert broke his thoughts. The Koran marauders had returned, larger in number and more aggressive than before. Red alarms flashed across the room and the ship vibrated slightly as shields prepared for impact. Ethan rose to his feet. "All right, team. Remember what we practiced. Improvisation, misdirection, and use the environment. Follow my lead where needed, but think for yourselves. Humans survive by acting, not by waiting. Serenya's eyes glowed with intensity. Stay close, observe, the bond requires it. And remember, survival is your gift. The first wave of Koran drones hit the ship. The Volari crew, now working in concert with Ethan's unorthodox strategies, reacted quickly. Drones were led into traps, decoys drew fire, and environmental systems disrupted enemy coordination. For the first time, the Volari fighters moved with a combination of traditional skill and human improvisation. Ethan guided them, pointing out weak points, suggesting diversions, and adjusting tactics on the fly. It was chaotic, loud, and dangerous, but it worked. The Quran attackers faltered, their predictable patterns disrupted by unexpected moves. During a lull, Ethan ducked behind a console, catching his breath. "Not bad," he muttered, looking at the crew around him. "They're starting to get it. Maybe humans aren't the only ones who can think differently." Serenya leaned lightly against him again, her voice calm but approving. "You have given them more than tactics. You have given them confidence. That is rare among the Volari, and yet, it is natural for humans." As the battle continued, Ethan noticed something else. The Quran marauders were not adapting as quickly as the Volari crew. Humans had a peculiar ability. They learned from mistakes, observed patterns, and acted unpredictably. By teaching these qualities, Ethan had not only improved the Volari defense, but also changed the enemy's expectations. Hours passed. The Quran attackers, frustrated and disorganized, began to retreat. The Volari crew cheered quietly, exhaustion and relief mixing in their voices. Ethan allowed himself a small smile. For a human, he had done more than survive. He had taught, adapted, and helped others endure. Serenya's hand rested on his arm. "You see, human? You do not fight like us. You survive by thinking, daring, and teaching. That is your gift. That is why the bond exists." Ethan nodded slowly. "Yeah, maybe. I'm still just trying to keep up, really, but I think I'm starting to understand." The ship settled into a quiet rhythm once more. Systems repaired, shields stabilized, and the crew began assessing damages. Ethan, exhausted but satisfied, leaned back, realizing how far he had come. From a naked human waking up on an alien ship to someone guiding an entire crew through a deadly battle, it was surreal. And yet, he knew the real challenges were still ahead. The Quran marauders would return, likely stronger and more determined. The Volari ship, no matter how large or advanced, could not withstand endless attacks. Humans survived because they adapted, and now Ethan had to continue teaching others to adapt as well. He glanced at Serenya, who was watching him with a calm intensity. "You've done well today," she said softly. "Not just surviving, but inspiring." "That is rare." Ethan smiled faintly, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with physical proximity. The bond, strange and unexpected, had grown into trust, reliance, and mutual respect. He realized that survival wasn't just about strength or skill. It was about connection, understanding, and the courage to act when others hesitated. For humans, survival was a way of life. And here, in the heart of an alien ship against impossible odds, Ethan Cole was proving exactly why. As the stars outside shimmered, distant and indifferent, Ethan made a quiet vow. He would continue to teach, continue to adapt, and continue to survive. Not just for himself, but for the princess, the crew, and the human way. Because humans endured. Humans improvised. Humans survived. And in the vastness of space, that might be the most dangerous, most unstoppable force of all. The calm of the Volari ship was fragile. Ethan Cole stood at the central control panel, watching the stars with narrowed eyes. The Quran marauders had returned. Larger in number than before, their ships dark and jagged against the void. There was no time for hesitation. Every second counted. Beside him, Princess Serenya's hand rested lightly on his arm, the bond between them a quiet, steadying force. Ethan had grown used to her presence, the warmth and calm she carried, even in the heart of danger. It was comforting, but it also reminded him of the responsibility he now bore. "They will not stop," Serenya said softly. "They believe we are weak. They do not understand the bond or the strength humans bring." Ethan exhaled slowly. Humans do survive, don't we? Sometimes by luck, sometimes by thinking differently. Let's see if we can do both." The attendants and crew gathered around, awaiting instructions. Ethan knew that brute force alone would not win this fight. The Quran marauders were skilled, relentless, and numerous. But humans had something no one else seemed to anticipate: unpredictability, creativity, and daring. He quickly assessed the battlefield. The Quran ships moved in tight formations, relying on synchronized attacks. The Valari fighters were strong, disciplined, but fewer in number. Direct engagement would be costly. Ethan thought fast. "We need to divide them," he said, pointing at the holographic display. "Draw the lead ships away from the main fleet. Use decoys, drones, and the ship's environmental systems. Create hazards in their path. Gravity shifts, electrical surges, magnetic fields. Force them to react, not act. That's how we survive." The Valari officers exchanged uncertain glances. "It is unconventional," one said. Ethan nodded. "Yes, that's the point. Humans survive by doing what others won't. Follow my lead, but think for yourselves. Improvisation is key." Serenia placed a hand on his shoulder. "The bond requires trust. I trust you. Now lead." With a deep breath, Ethan activated the plan. Valari fighters darted forward, baiting the lead Coran ships. Small drone swarms, guided by Ethan's improvisation, acted as decoys, drawing enemy fire. The environmental systems of the ship pulsed in precise sequences, creating disorienting bursts of gravity and localized electrical fields that forced the Marauders' ships to swerve. Chaos erupted in the enemy formation. The Quran ships faltered, their synchronized attacks breaking apart. One by one, they collided, misfired, or were forced out of position. Ethan's heart pounded. Good. Keep going," Serenia observed quietly, impressed. "Human ingenuity is unlike anything I have seen. You do not fight like the Valari, yet you command respect." Hours passed in a blur of lights, alarms, and constant adjustments. Ethan coordinated every move, anticipating the Marauders' reactions and improvising solutions on the fly. He directed decoys, guided fighters, and manipulated the ship's systems to create hazards that disoriented the enemy. The Valari crew began to trust his methods. They moved with confidence, combining their precision with Ethan's unpredictable strategies. Each time the Marauders tried to adapt, Ethan had already anticipated their moves, creating new obstacles and traps in real time. At one point, a Coran ship broke through a weak sector. Ethan acted instinctively, redirecting power to the shields and using the ship's magnetic field to slam it against a containment barrier. Sparks flew, alarms blared, and the enemy ship was neutralized. Humans survive by daring, Ethan muttered to himself, glancing at Serenia, and sometimes, by thinking faster than anyone else. The tide of the battle began to turn. The Quran Marauders, frustrated and disoriented, attempted a retreat, but Ethan was not finished. He noticed the command ship lagging behind, isolated from its fleet. "Target the command ship," he ordered. "If we take it down, the rest will retreat or surrender. Focus fire, but use traps first. Force them to waste their weapons. Humans survive by patience and timing as well as daring." The Valari fighters executed the plan. Using a combination of feints, decoys, and environmental hazards, they cornered the command ship. Ethan guided the maneuvers carefully, ensuring the enemy could not escape or counterattack effectively. Finally, the command ship faltered. Its weapons overloaded, shields collapsed, and it drifted helplessly. The Coran fleet, seeing their leader defeated, began to scatter in disarray. The battle was won. The Valari crew erupted in celebration, cheering quietly to avoid further attention from distant Marauders. Ethan allowed himself a moment to breathe, exhausted but exhilarated. Serenia approached, her eyes glowing with pride and relief. "You have done more than survive. You have led, taught, and inspired. Humans are extraordinary." Ethan shook his head, a tired but genuine smile on his face. "I'm just a mechanic. I didn't do anything magical. I just thought differently. Humans always try to survive no matter what." Serenia's gaze softened. "That is the human gift. To endure, to adapt, to overcome, and now, the Valari owe their survival to you." Ethan felt a strange mix of pride and humility. He had come to this ship as an ordinary human, naked and unprepared, and now he had become a figure of trust and respect. He had proven that humans, though small and seemingly fragile, had strengths that could not be measured by physical power alone. Over the next hours, the crew assessed damage, repaired systems, and treated minor injuries. Ethan moved among them, offering guidance, encouragement, and reassurance. He realized that survival wasn't just about fighting. It was about leadership, confidence, and the willingness to act when others hesitated. Serenia stayed close, often resting lightly against him, her presence a steady reminder of the bond they shared. "You see, human?" she said softly. "The bond is more than proximity. It is trust, courage, and action. That is why you were chosen." Ethan nodded slowly. "Yeah, I see it now. Survival isn't just about strength. It's about daring, thinking differently, and helping others endure. Humans, we do that naturally. For the first time, he felt truly at peace in the midst of chaos. He had faced impossible odds, guided an alien crew through deadly attacks, and proven the value of human ingenuity. The bond with Serenia was no longer just a strange obligation. It was a partnership built on trust and mutual respect. As the stars outside shimmered, distant and indifferent, Ethan realized something profound. Humans survived not because they were the strongest, but because they dared to act, thought differently, and refused to give up. That was their gift. That was their power. The Valari crew now looked at him with admiration, not just for surviving, but for showing them a new way to endure. Humans had brought something unique to this galaxy, something the Marauders could not understand or anticipate. Serenia smiled, her eyes bright. The galaxy will remember this day, not because of strength or numbers, but because of humanity. You have proven why humans endure where others fail. Ethan chuckled softly, exhaustion mingling with pride. I'm just me, a human, trying to survive, but it seems that's enough. The ship settled into a calm rhythm once more. Systems repaired, shields stabilized, and the crew began planning their next moves. Ethan leaned back, exhausted but satisfied. He had survived, taught, and inspired. And in doing so, he had shown the galaxy the true value of humans. As the stars outside stretched endlessly, Ethan reflected on the journey. From waking naked on an alien ship to leading a crew against deadly enemies, he had learned something essential. Humans survive because they endure, adapt, and act. They are unpredictable, resourceful, and daring. That is their gift. And in this distant corner of space, that gift had saved lives, won a battle, and forged a bond that could not be broken. Serenia stood beside him, her hand resting lightly on his shoulder. You have done more than survive. You have shown the strength of your kind. That is why the bond exists. That is why humans are needed in the galaxy. Ethan smiled, a genuine, weary smile. I guess humans do have a way. We survive even in the strangest, most impossible places. And sometimes, we even save the day. Serenia's eyes glowed softly, and for the first time, Ethan felt the full weight of the bond they shared, not just as protector and princess, but as equals in facing whatever the galaxy might throw at them. The stars outside shimmered, silent witnesses to the human way, enduring, adapting, and surviving against all odds. Ethan Cole, naked and chosen, had proven it fully. Humans were not just survivors. They were innovators, teachers, and a force the galaxy could not ignore. And as the Valari ship sailed onward through the stars, he knew that this was only the beginning. The bond would endure, the crew would thrive, and humans would continue to surprise, endure, and triumph in ways no one else could imagine.